We got a Freestyle Friday underway. MSNBC can't math good. Trump town hall on Fox News lays down a lot of important stuff for us. The administration is going to withhold funds from sanctuary cities. Bernie Sanders pushed really hard for Soviet propaganda to work better than he thought it would. And also breaking down the latest on the jobs report. And Michigan, will that be the place where the Sanders campaign ends? We got that and more coming up. Welcome to the Buck Sexton Show, everybody. It has been quite a week. I got to tell you, this is one of these weeks that I feel like we've all been through it. I can't really explain why. We got coronavirus fears all over the place. Every time I open up the Drudge Report, it's like the Drudge Report has turned into the guy pushing around a shopping cart with a sign that says, you know, John 3:16, and then another sign that says the world is ending tomorrow. You know, like I don't know what's going on here, but they need to calm down a little bit. We're going to be okay. This is a problem. We're on it. We're going to work together. We're going to figure this out. There's no need to panic. I'm reminded of Will Ferrell in Old School when he starts banging on the locker saying, we're going to keep our composure. We have to keep our composure here. It's going to be fine. I'll have some updates for you on that later. I'm also trying not to make every day. I think this is journalists become lazy with this. I'm not a journalist. I'm in media, but people that do media content that's based on news become lazy because just every day, we got a corona count every day, another thing, got to tell you. You don't have to know every little detail about every place all over the world where there's been another person with corona. That said, I'm not about to get on a cruise ship anytime soon. Plane, fine. I was on a plane last weekend. Cruise ship, I'm just not a cruise ship guy. Producer Mark and I have talked about this. It's not something that gets me excited. I'm not somebody who, of course, as I'm sitting here, I touch my face as I'm talking about this. That's the one thing you're not supposed to do. But I'll have some worthwhile coronavirus updates, just a few of them for you later on in the show. And I'm going to try not to make this every day just an ongoing, oh my gosh, coronavirus, COVID-19. There's a lot of other stuff to talk about. And since it's Friday, I wanted to start with one of my favorites. The media is something that I enjoy talking to you about because I've been a super consumer of news media for decades now. It's something that I've always been fascinated in. The first job I ever had, I guess, if you want to call an internship a job ever, was not including hourly stuff like tutoring and things to make some money when I was in high school, was working at CBS Evening News with Dan Rather as an intern. And that was great because I just remember walking around being like, okay, I was only 18. Like, nobody here seems to be really that smart. Everyone here is very stressed out and just constantly on each other about very minor things. And they all seem highly replaceable and overly anxious to me, including Dan Rather, who would show, he had the greatest job I'd ever seen. He would show up at, 3:30, 4 p.m., read through his lines, get his hair done, 30-minute broadcast, boom, $7 million a year. Because you need somebody who can look into the camera and sound like this, and it's ridiculous. I mean, it's absurd, the whole thing. It's a joke. I mean, it's an old model. Out with the boomers now, not as completely dominant about all media decisions. They're still dominant, but this old model is changing. The silent generation, the boomers, think that having one person, not all of you, if you're listening to this and you're a boomer, you're obviously a more sophisticated news consumer. But the old model was to have these people that would go on TV and they sound the part and they look the part and that's the news for today. And everyone goes, ooh, okay, that sounds like objective news. I'm informed now. False. And you have some of these vestiges, some of these holdovers from the news business that you see that are from that old model. And perhaps the single greatest example is Brian Williams, a guy with no discernible skill or talent other than just sort of looking and sounding like the guy that you should be listening to on the news. And then we found out that he was somebody who had told lies many, many times over. Not as many lies, I think, as we've already established Joe Biden has told in real ways that he will not be able to run away from And just remember that you've been lectured about how Trump lies for years. And they are putting forward a liar, a straight-up liar in Joe Biden against Donald Trump. And I have the evidence. We'll play some of it for you. We're going to keep running this. Just remember all their principles. Oh, it's really just that Trump lies. I mean, I had to deal with this in the Bill Maher show. Everything I tried to say. Well, hold on a second. What's going on with the coronavirus response that you don't like? Trump lies. Well, okay. I mean, they are working on an accelerated vaccine schedule. So when Trump says that, why is that? Trump lies. That's the only thing they say. Trump lies. This has become like the bleating of the stupid sheep from Animal Farm. Bah, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. That's what they're doing. They don't even think about it anymore. But Biden lies all the time. They don't care. He's Joe Biden. You can trust Joe Biden. I mean, Joe Biden really reminds me a lot of the Bill Paxton character in the R.I.P. A very good actor, by the way. In the movie True Lies. He's like, I've got a few other interested buyers. I mean, Joe Biden is the politician version of Bill Paxton in True Lies. I wish I could do more of the lines from that, but some of them would not be acceptable for radio. This is my way of telling you that some of the most prominent journos out there, ones that think they should tell you what to think, how to vote, how to behave, what you can say, are really not intelligent. They're just not very bright people. They're actors who got their way into, who found their way, worked their way into a journalistic establishment of some kind. And all that really takes is a few corporate execs in these places, because they're legacy institutions, places like NBC News, also MSNBC. These are really just versions of each other. NBC is the slightly more corporate-friendly, slightly watered-down version of the truly left-wing insane asylum that is MSNBC. But MSNBC can't math good. Nope, they've got problems over there. And here you have Brian Williams, who hold on a sec, producer Mark, before we get to this amazing clip. And it's one of the greatest news clips I've ever heard. I mean, it's that good. That's why I'm starting the show with it. Before I get to that with you, let's just remember that Brian Williams, before he was found, and it was just found by internet comments on posts about him, before it wasn't like, MSNBC or NBC did some big interview with him or investigation and figured this out. Brian Williams was the heir apparent to everything going on at NBC News. He was the guy. He was going to be the one. And they were paying him, I think, $15 million a year, and then we're about to pay him even more than that in a big contract before this whole controversy came out. And he was supposed to be the most trusted. Brian Williams could get an interview with any politician, anybody in the country, anytime. Most trusted voice in the country. And he's sitting down. I got to set the context for this. He is sitting down with a member of the New York Times editorial board named Mara Gay. And you would think the New York Times editorial board, they would sneer at submissions from real conservatives. Oh, that's not up to our standards. They have all kinds of political bias going on. But they think of themselves, even though they publish people like Charles Blow, Krugman, and others, they think of themselves as intellectual elites. And yet, Charles Blow, Krugman, I'm trying to think of who's some of the worst, Bruni, just Thomas Friedman, but they still hold to the standard. And they're referring, so you have a top anchor formerly of NBC, now MSNBC because of his problem with the truth, talking to a New York Times editorial board member about a tweet from somebody who is a Washington Post contributor, somebody who writes frequently, has in her byline the Washington Post and her contributions to it. This is how they math good. Play it, producer Mark.
You see it as a possibility if he wants to spend $1 billion beating this guy, he could do it.
Absolutely. Somebody tweeted recently that actually with the money he spent, he could have given every American $1 million.
I've got it. Let's put it up on the screen. When I read it tonight on social media, it kind of all became clear. Bloomberg spent $500 million on ads. U.S. population, 327 million. Don't tell us if you're ahead of us on the math. He could have given each American $1 million and have had lunch money left over. It's an incredible way of putting it.
It's an incredible way of putting it. It's true. It's disturbing. It does suggest, what we're talking about here, which is there's too much money in politics.
Oh my God. That is my favorite. That might be, that's a top 10 TV news clip. That is absolutely fantastic. You cannot make this up. That's right, folks. They think that because Bloomberg spent $500 million and the U.S. population is $327 million, he could easily give each American $1 million cash and have lots of money left over from what he spent on the campaign. Now, I make fun of things like Joe Biden saying that 100, as he did without correcting it. It wasn't misspeaking. He said it and he let it stay out there. Joe Biden said 150 million people have been killed in gun violence in the last 10 years. There are 320 million people in America, probably more like 330 now. A lot of illegal aliens. $500 million divided by $327 million is nowhere near $1 million per person. And yet, you have to remember, this isn't just something that was said. Because look, when you're math under pressure, one of the reasons people go into TV news, into acting, I'm just telling you the truth. Other people won't tell you. University teaching, get a PhD in the humanities, because they can't do math. It's true. If I was better at math, you think I'd be sitting here? I'd probably be working at some hedge fund, slapping producer Mark with $1,000 bills. But he wouldn't care because he'd be my right-hand man at the hedge fund, and he'd be driving around in a brand new Porsche 911. You know what I mean? He'd be fine with it. But that, if I was good at math, we'd probably be doing something else. I'm better at math than these people, though. That I can tell you. Brian Williams of NBC, New York Times, editorial board member, referring to a tweet put out by somebody from the Washington Post. These are three of the most elite media institutions you could find anywhere, and none of them picked this up. And you have to understand, this was a tweet they put on the screen. So they chose that this was prepared beforehand. Producers at NBC or MSNBC, this was at MSN, which is the same thing. Producers at MSNBC saw this tweet. They saw it and they thought, yeah, that really nails it. That really makes the case about how Bloomberg, they take the exact wrong lesson, by the way. The lesson of Bloomberg is that you can't buy an election. But their lesson that they take from this instead, because they like just the virtue signal of we don't want money in politics, is Bloomberg somehow shows us how corrupt elections are because he spent so much money and got nothing, zippo, nowhere. But put that aside for a moment. Yes, there is, and it's important, and this is part of the rethink of the ruling class in this country that has been going on as a result of Trump's rise. Those who seek to rule over us are media overlords, the people in positions of authority in government, in media, in so many ways. A lot of them got there for reasons that have, I would argue a vast majority, have very little to do with intelligence or ability. A lot of them just played politics well, understand the system, work the system, and in journalism in particular, are just ruthless and sociopathic. That's how they get where they are. But there are many, many, many sheer and utter, and I'm not saying this for a laugh line, it's true. There are dumbasses all over the mainstream media. Complete dumbasses. And you need to remember that. It's not that I just don't like some of their policies, because there are smart libs. I'll sit here all day if you want. I'll tell you who the smart libs are. There are smart libs, no question. I think they're wrong on stuff, but they're still very bright. There's also a lot of dumbasses, though. And this is just another example of, what a stuffed shirt phony Brian Williams is. Not just because of this, it's everything. You look at everything. This is a guy who just really mastered sounding a certain way and looking into the camera a certain way. He's not learned. He's not insightful. It was all an act. I don't even know who Mara Gay is. I honestly never even heard of her before, but clearly not very good at math. And the person whose tweet they referred to, who writes for Washington Post, I don't know who. I've never heard her name either, but this was amazing. The 11th Hour put out this tweet. Tonight on air, we quoted a tweet that relied on bad math. We corrected the error. We apologize for the error. Yeah, that's about as much as you could do. They don't math good over at MSNBC. Nope, they got problems over there. That's amazing. But go to them. Listen to them about what you should do in the stock market. Listen to them about coronavirus, who you should vote for. These people are brilliant. They know more than you. They think really hard all the time about all the important things. Team, one more point I wanted to make here about the most amazing MSNBC clip, which is saying a lot because MSNBC has some great moments that are unintentionally hilarious. I mean, MSNBC is a joke. It's to think of this as a news network is laughable, but it is what it is. There was one point here that I think a lot of people are going to skip past, and that is also, okay, we're making fun of them at math. And look, I'm not somebody who's great at math on the fly. I'm not going to pretend that I am better than these people, but not going to pretend like I'm good at math. There's also a reason why they would believe this, though. And I really mean this. They've convinced themselves. It is now liberal orthodoxy. They have convinced themselves that it is possible to just take money from billionaires and pay for everything. They think this is true. They believe the Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren rhetoric. I mean, this is a real political point about how you could have such a colossal and stupid mistake on TV. It's because everybody there has been hearing from all these Democrat candidates like Sanders and Warren and others, the millionaires and the billionaires will pay. And people think, oh, okay, all they got to do is tax the billionaires a little more, and we all have great free health care. This is a huge, a monumental, blatant, obvious lie. But they believe it. They believe it so much that they think, yeah, sure. If you just took what Bloomberg spent on the campaign, you could probably pay off the national debt or something. I mean, they think things that no reasonable person could because the propaganda about how billionaires could pay for everything in this country has seeped so far into their brains. This is real.
Don't listen to him. He was on, I think, Fox yesterday or something and telling people, go to work. It's nothing if you don't feel good. I mean, don't listen to him.
Don't listen to Joy Behar either. Please, don't listen to Joy Behar about anything. Speaking about people who are dumb and on TV. Woo! She's top 10. She's in a special category. She's like, oh my gosh, why do we have to listen to Trump? The president is trying to calm people down and tell people to keep going about their business. He's right to do so. There's clearly a merger now between Trump derangement syndrome and what we see going on with coronavirus coverage in the media. The more negative it is, the more they want to tie it to Trump. The more they can tie it to Trump, the more negative they want it to be. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a cycle. And yet, they want to pretend that they're doing this because they have your best interests at heart. Do not listen to the crazy media about this stuff. All right. Listen to people that you know and that you trust and that are trying to approach this with the first priority. And this is what I tried to, and again, I keep referring back to last week. I mean, I was honestly stunned. I mean, some of you have asked me about the Bill Maher appearance. I was stunned by how dishonest and how obtuse and just honestly dumb so much of the commentary around me was. I should have expected, the only thing I blame myself for with that is that I should have expected it a little bit more because I know how libs are, but I thought, it's not like we were just talking about, Trump on the border, that I'm always ready for. That you're going to get Trump, Trump's a racist. I thought on coronavirus, and this is my mistake, this is my error, that there should be some sense of responsibility and coming together, and we really don't want this to become a major problem. No one wants this to become a major problem because if it does, it means that there will be large numbers of seniors in this country our moms and dads, grandmas and grandpas, friends and neighbors. There'll be large numbers of seniors who could fall victim to this. And that should bring us together. That mission of protecting our seniors, because they're by far, as has been said by all responsible parties all along, they're by far at the greatest risk here. I mean, the numbers in terms of mortality for people over 70 who get COVID-19 versus people below 50. I mean, below 50, unless you're severely immunosuppressed, which I would note also means that you are every single year having to deal with the possibility of getting a fatal flu if you're really that immunosuppressed. So that's just to say that those people already understand they have to be very careful, very vigilant, and always will and always have been. But I thought that on this, we could approach this like it was a foreign invasion, but a pathogenic foreign invasion into this country, and that would bring us together. There'd be a little bit of a post 9/11 effect, which was a real thing, not with the whole left, but with some Democrats, with large numbers of Democrats. I'll be honest about it. I always will be honest with you. There was a sense the country was united against a common enemy. Our common enemy here is a pathogen. And yet the way that this is being reported on and talked about, the real enemy is Trump's response to the pathogen. And I should have known. I should have known that even now, with lives at stake here at home, their primary focus is not on educating, informing, and preparing the public for this and bringing us together for the most effective government response. Their primary goal is to use us as a weapon against Donald Trump. It's the truth. And it's actually, it feels kind of gross to say it, but it is the truth. I mean, it makes me feel bad about the state this country's in. And so that was because after my whole experience trying to talk to Mar and that panel, it just sort of felt icky, and I was like, well, what is wrong with these people? I mean, it really was, and it was, in that sense, very important for me going into this. I talk about being a wartime conservative, and you got to be a wartime conservative now on everything at all times, because the left will cede no common ground to you. There's no principles that they will not violate. They're in a total berserker mode trying to reestablish power and control. They'll do anything. It doesn't matter. So, lesson learned. I'm always learning. I learned from all of you as you write in and as we continue this conversation now many years in. That was a lesson for me. Another lesson is Joy Behar's an idiot. Don't listen to her. And if my words on this aren't enough for you, here's what she had to say about AOC running for president. Play 15.
So AOC would be actually a good choice, except that she's a Bernie person.
She's also not old enough.
Well, she's not as a VP?
Nope.
Yeah, well, the Constitution has a minimum age for president, and it's conceivable that the vice president is going to be president.
And now I know people could say, well, maybe she could be in the VP slot, but then she couldn't arise. But then why would you have a VP who couldn't arise to be president, right? Somebody might try to make that argument as why Joy Behar made that mistake, but Joy Behar had no idea that there was an age requirement for the presidency. None. Zero. And she's informing people across the country every day. Whew. I was told by somebody who would know that she makes $2-3 million a year to do that show, to be a total, utter buffoon. ABC News. ABC News would think that Joy Behar, acceptable for their brand, they wouldn't have me on. No. You can't have the political science guy from Amherst to work the CIA, a couple of war zones, and blah, blah. No. That's a little outside the mainstream. Let's have Joy Behar on. It's amazing, right? It's amazing. This is what we're up against. But then again, I mean, the only people who are dumber than mainstream media talking heads as a general rule are the mainstream media corporate executives that put them in these positions. They're even dumber and more like shameless and reckless and self-interested and everything else. So you've got to keep that in mind. So I'm glad we've had a little bit of a deep dive here into the stupidity of the media. Now I want to take you into, which is a very real thing. Oh wait, I didn't mention this before. The Bloomberg, they're talking about this. We got into this because of the Bloomberg money that was spent in the campaign, and now it's coming out. I was making these jokes at producer Mark, like, can we just wear like a Bloomberg T-shirt, show up at a rally, and eat the Wagyu beef sliders and the little foie gras terrines and whatever else they've got at the Bloomberg rallies? You know, is that it turns out that people who work for the Bloomberg campaign are now saying that it was a grift, that a lot of them were actively campaigning for Bernie Sanders while on the Bloomberg campaign payroll. They did the absolute bare minimum of work. Those who even believed in Bloomberg a little bit essentially changed their minds after his admittedly disastrous debate performance. You know, I had people sign NDAs and I didn't want to let them out. How much money do I have to pay you to get you to stop asking about the NDAs? You know, Elizabeth Warren, man, she went after him. She went after him big time. You know, so she may have buried the hatchet, but not before she used it against Mike Bloomberg. And, you know, this is just what we all expected, that Bloomberg came in with all of this money, but politics is about more than just money. The left doesn't want to learn that very clear lesson from this process because they'd prefer to they've created this perception that the right is where all the money is in politics somehow, even though if you look at like the ultra billionaires in Silicon Valley, they're liberals. They're liberals. So that's one thing about the Bloomberg campaign that I wanted to get to. Now we have to look at what's going on with Joe Biden. He is able to possibly finish off Bernie Sanders in Michigan, depending on how Michigan goes. I've already seen polls in Florida where apparently it is not a popular position to take that, you know, Castro did some good things. They don't like hearing that in Florida. There's a whole community of folks down there who really don't appreciate, always looking for the bright side of Castro's prison state. So Bernie is in really bad shape in the Florida poll. So he's toast there against Biden. But Michigan might end him even before that. When I say end him, he's going to take it all the way to the convention. But he'll be far behind in delegates. Everyone's going to know that Biden's the real front runner. So we have to dig more into Joe Biden because you've seen a little bit of this. There are some liberals out there who are honest about how Joe Biden isn't what they thought they would end up with after a year of a Democrat primary. Think about all the candidates, all the excitement around Kamala and Beto and Buttigieg, and there were like 4 or 5 people who were excited about Julian Castro. And, you know, I mean, like, think about all these different folks. Or was it Joaquin? No, it was Julian. Joaquin's his twin brother. I forget. It was one of the Castro brothers. So with all of that, they end up with the least exciting, second oldest, and arguably just like the most boring white dude on the planet, Joe Biden. That's what the Democratic Party, after all the diversity, all the female candidates, everything, they end up with a guy that if you were casting somebody to be the quintessential machine politician, it would be big, grinning, handshaking, baby sniffing, woman grabbing Joe Biden. That's what you would have. I mean, especially if you were doing a comedy. Corn pop, and I took the chain, man, and I had a razor, and I made it rusty, and I was going to go out there and rumble with corn pop because the hair on my legs were blonde, and I was like, hey, look at the sun glistening through my leg hairs, kid. This isn't weird. I'm just telling you a story. I think it's a little weird. Here's Biden's promise, though. He says that he's going to win, and that's been the promise all along. Play clip 10.
Look, I think the one thing the president doesn't want to do from the very beginning is face me, because I will beat him. Period. He has done everything in his power. He's even risked his presidency because he doesn't want to face me. A rhetorical question. Have you ever seen a sitting president get so involved in a Democratic primary and focus so much attention on not wanting a single person, me, to become the nominee? The president does not want me to be the nominee.
I think this is going to work out very well. I think Joe Biden, everyone has realized for a long time, has been propped up by the machine. They tried to do this with Hillary in 2016. They are, the definition of insanity is trying the same thing and expecting a different result. That's that saying. They're running the same election they did in 2016. They're expecting a different result. Do we really think that Joe Biden is a more inspiring, more effective candidate than Hillary Clinton? Now, I think that Hillary is, has a lot of problems, but Democrats love her. They do. The Democrat establishment loves Hillary Clinton. That's why they went to bat for her against Bernie in the first place. That's why the deep state covered for her with the email fiasco. I mean, there was so much that you look at here that they did. And the media was just all in against Trump in favor of Hillary, and it wasn't enough. They think that it's going to be enough for Biden. Let's unpack that theory together a little bit.
And for folks in the working class that are below 400, they will, in fact, increase their premiums. The public option will be available in my plan. We'll make sure it's not quality. We'll make sure it's only affordable.
We'll make sure it's not it's not quality, but only affordable. What? You're going to have a lot more of this. Joe Biden, for a man who effectively makes his living speaking publicly, that's really what his job is. He's made millions of dollars as a paid public speaker since leaving the vice president's office. Millions of dollars. We're also going to learn more and more about the millions of dollars that his son and brother and other people around him made just because they happen to be friends with Joe Biden. Interesting. Burisma's not the only thing that people are going to be poking into. But Biden's gaffes are one thing, and the media is going to tell you. I already know what they're going to just say, oh, everybody makes mistakes. And you'll start to see clips of Trump, speaking off the cuff where he stumbles on something, and they're going to try to say, oh, it's all the same, and he's not senile and all that. Well, you got two big problems here for Biden that are on the style side of things, not looking so much at the substance of what he stands for, but more of Joe Biden, the person, and stylistically how he is as a politician. You have the gaffes, the misspeaking, which is not really a big issue, except people honestly think that he might be in the early stages of dementia. And I think that that's a fair discussion to have, given some of the things that he says. But then there's also that Joe Biden, as I told you at the beginning of the show, Joe Biden is a huge liar. He has a long established history of lying about things publicly and on the record. This was just an old news report circulating right now about Joe Biden. I think this is back in the 80s when he was running for president the first time around. This is going to come back to haunt this guy. Play 23.
The new questions stem from taped remarks of Biden during an April campaign appearance in New Hampshire.
I went to law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class to have a full academic scholarship. Went back to law school and, in fact, ended up in the top half of my class. I was the outstanding student in the political science department at the end of my year. I graduated with 3 degrees from undergraduate school and 165 credits, only needed 123 credits.
Biden now concedes he did not graduate in the top half of his law school class, that he does not have 3 degrees from college, and that he was not named outstanding political science student in college.
Newsweek says Biden actually went to school on a half scholarship, ended up near the bottom of his class, and won only 1 degree, not 3.
Joe Biden ranked 76th in a class of 85 at the University of Syracuse Law School. I mean, this guy comes off this whole thing as a flyweight.
Now Biden says Newsweek is right. His memory had failed him.
His memory had failed him. My friends, I am honored every day by this audience giving me their time. I mean, I really do. I love all of you, even though I've only met a handful of you in person. If I ran around saying that I was a Harvard-educated Rhodes Scholar who also, won like a Westinghouse Prize in science, and it turned out that no, like I just went to undergrad somewhere and got a degree like everybody else. Would anybody believe that that was just my memory? By the way, this was in the 80s. He wasn't super old. Anybody believe that that would be okay? I'd get a pass on that one. 3 degrees? No. 1 degree. Full scholarship? No. Partial scholarship. Top of his class? No. Bottom of his class. Joe Biden is a consistent and continuous liar. Some people might even say pathological